12:35 on the Wintrust Business Lunch on WGN. There's been a lot of conversation lately about bicycle safety, about utility trucks parking in bike lanes, blocking views, and then tragedy ensues, or it's just continually inconvenient. Chicago has been trying to become a more bike-friendly city, but how are we doing? Ben Harvey is with us now, an organizer with Chicago Bike Grid Now. He's the creator of a new RideReel app called RideReel. We'll talk about that in just a second. Thanks for joining us. You're on WGN, Ben. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
You're also I'm fine, thank you. You're also a web developer. So which are you first, a bike enthusiast or a computer guy?
I wouldn't even say I'm a bike enthusiast. I'm just a dude who wants to get around on a bike. I think that the infrastructure is failing us. In Chicago last year, there were over 100,000 car crashes, and those crashes caused $183 million in damages. There were over 2,200 severe injuries, and 147 people were killed. And we've just accepted this as a fact of life. And my argument and my idea, my plan for this app is this is not the fault of individual drivers. This is a greater structural problem with our city's infrastructure.
Namely what? How do we change the infrastructure to make it safer for everybody?
Yeah, so I'm with an organization called Bike Grid Now, and we want a network of streets that prioritize bikers, pedestrians, people in wheelchairs. It's done through redesigning the streets, adding things like raised crosswalks, separated and protected bike lanes. Basically, we want it to make it as easy as possible to drive. Drivers shouldn't have to think about staying within the speed limit, for example. The streets will basically just enforce that.
We have something like that over by the Thompson Building or the Daily Center, right?
Yeah, we have a couple areas in Chicago that have decent bike infrastructure, but still as a whole, it's just been completely neglected.
Is it a matter of financing or will, or probably both, I suppose, but I mean, it strikes me as this is more complicated than just painting some white lines on the pavement.
Yeah, and we have some painted bike lanes, which, they're there, but most times drivers just they just ignore them. They can drive right through it, and it doesn't cause any issues for them. What we're advocating for on larger arterial roads is physical barriers that make it impossible for a driver to even do that.
Right. And it seems to be like there's one area downtown where, in fact, they have sort of segregated physically. I don't remember exactly what mechanism they used, but it was almost impossible for the car to be on the bike lane and the bike to be in the car lane. You have this RideReel app that's in beta form, but I understand we can go there now and see what you've posted, and that is videos of what? What do we see when we go there, Ben?
Yeah, so I'm calling for people riding bikes to use some sort of dash cam. You can do it on your phone. You can get your own camera and just record their rides. And whenever something happens that is basically a failure of infrastructure, whether it's a driver cutting in front of the bike, these could be deadly things, and they have been deadly things in Chicago. So I'm asking bikers to record the ride and upload any events, incidents that would, made them feel unsafe. And so anybody can go on the website is ridereel.app, and they can see all these incidents that I have been uploading and other people in the Chicago bike community.
Give me an example. What have you put up there? What do I see when I go there?
Yeah, so there's one example where so I was going south on Halsted and Halsted in Chicago, just north of that. The bike lanes just kind of disappear. There's no infrastructure for it. Streets are extremely wide, and you see a SUV driver just blowing past me at probably 35, 40 miles an hour, and there's absolutely nothing physically protecting bikers from that behavior.
What about this? Would you be posting video showing bicyclists doing something unsafe and making the roads unsafe?
I think there's a very big difference between people on bikes and people on cars. People on bikes don't kill people. Cars are very large, and oftentimes the streets allow them to, not really have to pay attention to the streets, and they are the ones causing vehicular violence. Again, I want to push that this is not an individual, this is not the fault of individual drivers. This is the infrastructure itself. So I don't think it's fair to, equivalate what drivers are doing with what bikers are doing.
That's an interesting sort of position to stake out, but maybe that's really where this argument should take place, or this conversation should take place. It shouldn't be an argument, not who's at fault. Is it because if you did what I did for a living, you would hear from both sides all the time. People are as mad at bicyclists as cyclists are at cars, but we wouldn't even be having that conversation if we just had a safer place for both groups to exist, right?
Exactly.
And is the city interested in this? Maybe we could all post videos, but I wonder what the lever is going to be to get something to change.
Right. So I plan on reaching out to alders and city council with these videos and try to give them a weekly report of, hey, here's 30 videos that were taken in your ward where, if just one little thing had gone wrong, the biker could have been seriously injured or killed. Through Bike Grid Now, as an organization, we've been reaching out to alder candidates and mayoral candidates and trying to get them to endorse this idea of a bike grid, which is 10% of Chicago city streets prioritized for bikers, pedestrians, which basically just means, slow speed limits and, physical protection. And we have had, I believe, over 30 mayoral and alder candidates endorse us already.
There's a piece in the Sun-Times from Andrew Mack, who is with the Chicago Bike Grid Now group, and he's echoing a lot of the things you're saying in the Sun-Times. We know how to prevent traffic deaths. The answer is to discourage driving personal cars and encourage active transportation alternatives like walking, cycling, and taking transit. Bike Grid Now, what does that mean, Chicago Bike Grid Now?
Well, the bike grid is this concept that we're looking at Chicago, and we have a very particular way our streets are designed, which is, I'm sure everyone's aware, the grid, where it's very easy to get from place to place and, without a lot of complex navigation. And we just want to take 10% of those streets, and we're not really asking to remove cars necessarily from those streets, but we want to make them stress-free routes to be on a bike, or if you're walking, and mostly just side streets. We're also so basically that would just, a biker could get anywhere in the city safely and comfortably. Is
there a city that you aspire us to be? Is there, in the United States or elsewhere in the world, a city that you think does this well?
I don't think in the United States there is anything that we should really strive for yet. But there are Paris, Milan, two examples in Europe that in a very short amount of time, within a couple of years, they have completely overhauled their streets. They had streets very similar to what Chicago has, but in a couple of years with their leadership, they have been able to make a similar bike grid happen.
Boy, when you see some of those cities, it is amazing how many people are riding bikes. First of all, we got to be all willing to do that in all kinds of weather. And then we need to be able to get good at it. And then we need to have the infrastructure to do it. It would be such a cultural shift, but it has to start somewhere. So I like the attitude, and I'm interested in this app. If you want to see what's happening now, you can go to RideReel.app. That's A-P-P, RideReel.app. Ben Harvey's the creator of that. Nice to talk to you today, Ben. Thanks for your thoughts.
Thank you. You too.